When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. And that's exactly what you've done, everyone. You've joined us for another fantastic episode of the ClickerCast. Every week, myself, Chris, and my lovely co-host, my fellow runner, the man of many pixels, Mr. Richie, joins me. Welcome back.
Good evening.
Good evening indeed. You're joining us this Wednesday, not a Tuesday, our usual recording time, live on youtube.com/HalixPlaysGames, and of course up there in the digital lives and the digital clouds on your. That's because someone in the chat said 9 lives. Don in the chat said lives, and I immediately took a fraction of a second to glance over and saw 9 lives, and then that threw me off. But here we are. We're here to break down episode 7, Left Behind, of The Last of Us, of course, HBO's wonderful adaptation of the wonderful Naughty Dog video game. Richie, we're 7 episodes out of 9 into this show right now. How does that make you feel? Are you getting sad that the end is nearby, or are you excited for the finale?
Both, actually. I'm feeling like 9 episodes. Initially, when you kind of break down the story, Last of Us goes, is 9 going to be enough? But I think 9's enough, to be honest.
It seems like we're starting to get to that end, that natural conclusion.
Depending how next week's goes, I think 9 episodes is probably going to be just enough to tell this story.
It certainly will be. And of course, we'll be here to break down that story every single week on the ClickerCast, like we do here. Before we do get into the show, though, everyone, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you're kept in the loop with all the wonderful content we do here at Helix Plays Games, like this very show, our weekly PlayStation podcast, Talking the PS, our weekly Xbox podcast, the X-Pass podcast. They go live, respectively, every Monday and Tuesday here on YouTube and up there in the digital clouds on your podcast preference of choice, alongside our live streams, our first looks, and everything else. But we're here to talk about The Last of Us. That's why we're joined by you, the wonderful community out there. Joining us, I can see plenty of folks in the chat right now. Don, Jin, Raven stopping by. Hope you're all good out there tonight. Hope you've enjoyed episode number 7 with an approximate runtime of 55 minutes. Richie, let's dive into it. What were your first impressions of this week's episode?
It's another solid episode. It's hard to actually say because pretty much no episode I've had any real complaints about. So it's like I'm trying to think of where does it stack up in compared to all the other episodes. And it's definitely not one of my favorite episodes, but it's definitely not one of the worst episodes. But even the worst episodes is amazing television. So it's it's just fantastic. It just continues to just deliver at a high level.
It's like a slice of nice cake, right? The cake is still awesome, several slices in. Each cake slice might be a little bit better. You might get some different frosting on the top or icing or little treats, but overall, it's all good cake.
It's like if someone went to you, right, here's some cake, you can have 1 slice a week, so you don't get too full. You don't ever sit down and eat too much cake in one go, but the cake will never go stale. So next week, it's going to be the same cake, it's going to be just as good. Which means you can enjoy it again. And
no fungus in this cake, we should point out. No fungus.
Mold it doesn't go stale.
Has grown.
No mold.
What a cake analogy. But we're here, of course, to break it all down. My overall thoughts, I really enjoyed this episode again. A little bit of a pacing change from what we've been used to. Obviously, we take quite a large step back in time for about 95% of this episode. Unlike previous episodes when we've had kind of glimpses and flashbacks to previous moments in different quarantine zones. We've, of course, had the cold openings right at the beginning of the season, kind of showing us what Outbreak Day looked like. But this is the first time we've spent really any substantial time living in the past and seeing one of the characters we've known throughout several episodes now and how they kind of came to be. And of course, before we get into the full episode breakdown, for those fans of the video game, again, here on the show, we delve into the comparisons and the adaptations. This will be quite spoiler heavy for those who haven't played the game. And more importantly, those who have played the game, but maybe skipped out on the DLC, because this episode very much centers around the Last of Us video game's downloadable content from back in 2014, Left Behind, which we released several months after the initial game launch, and I'd imagine a lot of people missed out on it. Richie, did you play this at the time, or did you play this in the remastered version many years later?
Well, I didn't have a PS3, so I didn't play The Last of Us when it first came out, so I played the remastered version on the PS4, and it just came bundled in for DLC. But actually, I just thought of it, this episode actually could stand as DLC to the show.
Yeah, they could have brought it out months and months later.
Start and end the episode in the exact same place in terms of Joel and Ellie's story, which is basically what happens in the DLC in like Left Behind DLC. So if you wanted to skip a week, this is the one you skip, because I think if you take episode 7 out, you could just get through to the end. Yeah, I mean, you're missing context and how Ellie's growth, and like know more about Ellie and her relationships, and now it does give you a lot of insight into how Ellie used to be.
Yeah.
Who Ellie is, actually, who she still is in a lot of ways.
Why she is the way she is, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's completely right. You kind of probably could, because at the end of last week's episode, we know Joel was injured. And then from looking ahead to next week, we're going to see Joel kind of still injured, but in a recovering kind of place. However, yeah, you could take this episode out. And I've seen quite a few comments on the internet, probably from people who haven't played the games and they're just enjoying the show, complaining about this episode just being filler. And it's obviously not, because it adds a lot of depth to the character. We learn about a history in quarantine zones, and again, the whole kind of theme of the entire series has been about like love and relationships, and this is what it shows. It's one of Ellie's key pivotal relationship moments in her life, which makes her who she is today, and what a relationship with Joel eventually will probably grow to be. So,
well, in a way, it kind of is filler, because bear in mind this entire episode is based off of DLC. So when Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog conceived the game initially, back when The Last of Us was originally released on the PS3, while they had already come up with the story of Ellie's background and of Riley and the mall, they already knew that stuff about Ellie. So it's not like they wrote that for the DLC, but they opted not to put it in.
Yeah.
And then opted to bring it out later. So then, if you take it in that sense, The Last of Us without Left Behind, which, yeah, it works. It still works, and it doesn't progress the main plot forward. But there again, you can make the same argument about Bill and Frank. You can make the same argument about any stories or TV shows or movies that inherently have flashback sequences, because you are seeing something before the events of today happen. It's like prequel movies, that they happen when you know the character's outcome. You know some people are going to survive, some are going to die, and whatever. But again, the whole premise of kind of the series is evidently telling stories about relationships. So even though we jump back in time, it's still very, very relevant, I feel, to character growth. That's what I was going to get onto. I think the reason why I wouldn't consider it filler, even though I could understand why some people could, is it does inform Ellie's decision. Yeah, everything that happens in this episode does inform Ellie's decision at what it turns out is both the start and end of the episode.
Absolutely.
That moment when she's got a hand on the doorknob. I kept thinking when I was thinking about this yesterday. It's like, it's almost like there's so many points of no return throughout this episode. So many choices where things could go. There's like a fork in the road, and every character just keeps coming up to these forks in the road in this episode. Like, which path do you walk down?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ellie's decision regarding what she does with Joel is very much informed by what happens in the past in the mall with Riley.
It certainly is. And of course, getting into the kind of the thick of the show, I guess, we're introduced this week to Riley Abel, who's Ellie's friend, played by actress Storm Reed, who some of you may recognise. The only notable thing that I recognised her from was she plays Bloodsport's daughter in the more recent James Gunn Suicide Squad. So Bloodsport's Idris Elba's character, she's the daughter, his reason why he wants to work for the Suicide Squad, because he wants to do right by his daughter, which is a bit of an odd topic, but we're not going to go into the pros and cons of the Suicide Squad on this very show, Richie. But obviously she's a great upcoming actress who does a fantastic performance in this show. She's Riley's Ellie's friend. We're introduced to Captain Kwong as well, played by Terry Chen, and we get a brief view at a girl called Beth, played by Ruby Libet as well. Of course, Riley is introduced, as you said, Richie, in the DLC. She's not in the main game. She's referenced in the main game briefly through Ellie's backpack. You find some items in a backpack that kind of reference her relationship. Anyone who's read the comic book American Dreams as well introduces, it basically tells you, it came with, actually, I didn't realise I had it. I have the 2013 Joel Collector's Edition of The Last of Us for PlayStation 3, and I had a look through it with my wife the other week, and just going through, I've got Firefly stickers, some odd bits and pieces. The game came in this weird case, and then the American Dreams comic book, which basically it's nothing too long. It just introduces Ellie being dropped off at the quarantine zone school, the Fedra school. Basically shows how she gets in trouble, just like she does in this episode. getting punched across the face with a big crack there. So she has the similar relationship as she does with certain characters in the show. Riley basically stands up for her, and they become friends, and the comic book basically ends, just to quickly skip ahead, with stuff popping off in federal prison, and they're best friends, and she basically says, yeah, come hang out with me, and we'll be great friends in Boston QZ. And this is kind of where it then leads into this episode of Left Behind and the events that lead up to Riley disappearing for several weeks. But new characters, welcome. Here we are. New folks in the chat, welcome. Let's get into the thick of the breakdown, Richie, because that's what we do here on the ClickerCast. We break it down on a granular level, beat for beat. And this week, we open with Joel's perspective. He's been dragged across the floor, through the snow, through a town, leaving quite substantial, how would you say, like track markings covered in blood on the floor. If you wanted to track this person, not making it too difficult, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much Ellie can do about that. She's clearly... It's quite subtle the way it's showed, but like, you think like, there's no way Ellie's going to lift Joel back onto the horse.
No, not at all.
So she needs to find a way effectively drag him through the snow.
Yeah, she must use some. I mean, you see it in the basement that they're in.
I think it's hinted that she uses a sleeping bag.
Yeah, sleeping bag, which I guess that's what you've got to hand. Drags him, ties him to the horse, drags him along, and they kind of take shelter in this abandoned basement in like a small town, a hamlet, if you will, in the middle of winter still. So again, very, very cold. Joel has a very gaping wound in his stomach from last week when he stupidly removed the shards of a wooden bat from his stomach. Probably surprised he hasn't bled out, to be fair. We see a scene where Ellie covers Joel up with his jacket, Joel not looking too hot. Although I will say, I'm very surprised they didn't kind of wash Pedro Pascal's face out. He looked quite colourful and rosy in the cheeks for someone who's probably lost a good couple of pints of blood.
I think they're doing it intentionally because what we know in the game, which is kind of touching on to what we'll expect to see next episode, is it's not actually the blood loss that's going to get him. He ends up getting an infection.
Oh, not that type of infection, though.
No, just normal everyday infection, like as you would get if you stabbed with like a broken baseball bat or a bit of glass or a bit of like
anything dirty,
whatever it was in the game. Yeah, it's just like, and then it's not treated properly.
Yeah, and of course there's that massive risk of like hypothermia as well. For the fact that they're in the middle of winter, very, very far up north in the United States.
And we don't know how long this has been. This might have only been like an hour since it happened.
That's very true. But he basically...
The fact that Ellie's just now performing like first aid on him, I'm guessing it hasn't been long. She hasn't been riding for hours.
Yeah, she seems to stem the blood flow a little bit because he's not gushing blood from his wound. But she has a look at it. He basically tells her to leave. He whispers to her, say like, "Go, head north. Go back for Tommy." And he like physically pushes her off him and says like, "Just go now." And that's Joel, I think, making that decision that like he's a goner. I'm dead to this world. You need to use these precious seconds to like get away from here, because he knows like they will be hunted down. He knows those 4 people are after them. He's probably been laid on his back, being dragged along in the snow, knowing fine well he's leaving a trail of both blood and markings in the snow. And again, Ellie, he knows Ellie. He's only just started to teach her how to use a rifle and stuff. She is still a young girl, and again, he thinks what's best for her now is you leave. You go find Tommy. Get away.
Realistically, what are they going to do? They're going to go back, grab more of their friends, then come track them.
Yeah, because Joel killed the other guy. He killed someone on their squad, so they're out for vengeance, we presume. But yeah, Ellie covers him with his jacket, and then she kind of goes to leave up the stairs. You see kind of Joel shed one tear across his face, which I don't know how you would read into that, Richie. Would you read it as he's sad that she's leaving him for dead, or do you think he's kind of just accepted that he can no longer protect her anymore and he's failed in his fatherly mission yet again?
I think it's a lot of things. It's part of him facing his own mortality.
Yeah, I mean,
he's just opened himself up with Ellie to being like more than just survival. He now has someone he cares for. Now he's also failing now again as a father, which is one of his biggest fears, we learned last week. And then and now he's basically having to force Ellie, and he has to force her.
Yeah, like it's kind of like when you see when you see in the movies they get rid of a dog and they take the dog out to the forest and they go take the collar off and go run away, and the dog doesn't know what to do and they're like go, and they have to throw stones at the dog and say shoo get away, save yourself. It's very reminiscent of that. But yeah, father saying like go, when obviously everything instinctively is like no, I want to stay and look after you, I want to make sure you're okay. But yeah, the facing his own mortality is probably a thing that would upset a lot of us as well. That reality of like, when she leaves up them stairs, I'm not moving by myself right now. I just have to accept I'm here for another, several hours, maybe days, until my body gives up on me and I die in the basement of an abandoned town.
And again, I think that context, if you put it in the context of last episode, which was kind of Joel's emotional breakdown and really starting to accept that he can find some joy in life, and he has this surrogate daughter that he really cares for, and he's seen Tommy like now is an expecting father and all that kind of. So he's probably excited to become an uncle, and like he seems to. At this point, I think he's already decided he's going to go there. He's going to go to the university. He's going to do the thing with Ellie, then come back to Jackson.
Yeah, he's kind of plotting
and
out.
then forge a life with Ellie and Jackson. Like,
yeah, seemingly so. So, lots of things for Joel to tussle with, and as I said, that's just that one tear down the side of his face, and Ellie kind of runs up the stairs and she hovers, as you said, over that door handle to leave the basement and essentially leave Joel. And you've got to wonder what's going through her head. Is she immediately just always staying with him, or is she about to, I guess, escape on her own, take the horse, take Callus, and go back to find Tommy, I guess? Would she even be able to navigate her way back? That's another thing. So again, little girl now left on her own in this crazy world, which she's still not quite adjusted to yet. She is still a child. And then we get a flashback. We flash back to Ellie back in the Boston QZ and presumably running laps in gym class with her Sony Walkman, which, interesting that the show kind of set it up this way, because watching it and watching it back for a second time, I would have imagined this would have been good as a cold open in the present day. Cut to the Lasso's introduction, you get the HBO cinematics and such.
Had a cold opening. Joel was probably quite cold.
Yeah, very cold indeed. But then, I thought then we would have the intro and then we would start in the past in the QZ. But Craig Mazin in the official HBO podcast, go watch it. It's got fantastic insight into the show. If you think this has insight, our show, theirs has infinitely more from the creators themselves. And yeah, they kind of said that they didn't have a cold open because they wanted to specifically just get straight into it this week and show that it was all Ellie's thought process. It wasn't for the audience. This is Ellie's thought process, and her hand hovering over the handle. If they then cut to a 30-second fantastic intro with HBO cinematics and graphics, it would have detracted away from the urgency which she's thinking in that moment in time.
You know, one of the things I think as the show goes on week, it's starting to become more and more apparent is there's an absolute rejection of kind of anything formulaic about the show. It's just a case of, okay, this week, what is the story we're telling? What is the best way that we can tell the story? And they've just done that consistently week on week. So sometimes a cold open works, whether it's giving backstory about the infection or seeing Joel kind of mourning Tess.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it's like, you know what we want for the cold open this time is a reminder of where these two characters are at before we cut away.
Yeah.
Before we cut away for the majority of the episode.
Yeah, because it does something psychologically to have that cut and then to something that I guess essentially is taking you out of the show, because you get the music, you get the intro, you get the spores spreading around. Visually looks great, but yeah.
Bear in mind, it is that kind of thing. They know this is getting released in a weekly schedule, so it's been a week since we've seen these characters.
Yeah. And
then, okay, so you're reminded what the situation is, and it's almost like a tease, like, okay, this guys, remember the situation? Yeah. No, we're not going to talk about that now for another 50 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You need to set it up, and they know what they're doing. And I think Jin in the chat kind of summarizes it up. Jin's not played the game, so watching the show, he says, "Yeah, I like how every episode is completely different and unpredictable." So again, coming from an outside perspective, it must be really insightful to have this variation in kind of tempo and pace, and all feeding into this overarching narrative. So anyway, we're back in the Boston QZ. We see Ellie running laps with a Fedra trainee on the back of her jumper. She get the head before she gets the headphones ripped off her. I noticed there was like a weird black flicker. I don't know if you picked up on this whole kind of segment. There's like a black flickering filter that they put over it to, I guess, show that we're back in time a little bit. You know, usually they put like a weird blue filter. Yeah, and it really didn't work for me. It took me out of the show a little bit. I think the cinematography and direction's been so good, and then it just felt odd to have this 20-second shot with like a black, almost like an Instagram filter, like an old grey, and we're back in 1920s or something. It just didn't quite work for me. I don't know if anyone else picked up on that, but
I never noticed it, but now you mention it,
it's just odd.
I think it's almost as if it was recorded on VHS.
Yeah, which I can see why they might want to do that, but it just didn't feel very fitting for everything else we've seen in the prior 7 episodes to suddenly add a filter over the top of it. It's just something I don't feel like we've seen before, but I won't get caught up on that. Ellie gets her headphones ripped off. She's lagging behind the rest of the trainees doing laps in the gym. We all remember PE class back in the day, Richie, doing just when the teachers had nothing necessarily planned out for you, so they just make you do some laps. The bleep test, am I right?
Yeah.
Let's just press play on this cassette, which it was a cassette when we were in school, Richie. Let's press play on this cassette. You're just going to run wall to wall in line with the beep. Oh, I hated those ones. Either way, Ellie has her headphones ripped off by a new girl we're introduced to, Beth, and she basically says, like, keep up with it, I'm not getting in trouble for you keeping us behind. Ellie declares that she doesn't want to fight Beth. Beth refutes it, saying, like, oh, you're not the fighter, that was your friend, and she's gone. And we immediately get in, kind of honing Richie on the whole purpose of this episode, is that Ellie is on her own, which, remember from previous weeks when she was talking to Sam, what was she scared of the most? Being left alone. And here we are, even though this is in the past, so there is some timey-wimey thing going on here, but here she is. She's left alone with a group of people, and she's been picked on. And Ellie kind of digs deep and knows that her friend's gone. What does she do, Richie?
She straight up punches her in the face. There's a weird thing is, like, I think it's implied there's a lot of history between them, but I don't think, apart from the dig about, like, what Ellie's friend, which, to be honest, in a school situation, it doesn't seem that harsh of a dig, to be honest. We've definitely heard worse in the school ground. And I think in some ways Beth is kind of right to go to Ellie, like, come on, like,
yeah,
if you don't come up, we're all going to have to do laps. You're kind of letting us all down here, like. And Ellie's just it's almost like Ellie's isolated herself in some ways. I mean, there's definitely history between them. Like, they don't
undoubtedly.
Get on.
Yeah, it almost paints Beth as though she's like the bully, but I guess you've got to.
It's trying to pitch Beth as kind of being like more of a sergeant-y character. Like,
yeah, well, we hear a little bit more about that. And for me, though, obviously, we've got to understand that when she says your friend's gone now, we later find out that, like, Ellie thinks, like, Riley could be dead. In this world, when someone, as we know with Joel and Tommy, when you don't hear from someone for 3 weeks, that could potentially be the worst case scenario. Like, they could be dead out there attached to a wall like a giant mushroom. So someone if you disappeared, Richie, for 3 weeks and then someone tried to wind me up about you, I might punch them in the face as well. You'll be glad to know.
You got worried once when I had a hangover.
Exactly, because you didn't answer your phone when we were going to record.
I was asleep.
We had a couple of people in the chat. Don says, yeah, don't mess with Ellie or she will lay the beats into you with her Walkman. And Raven says, yeah, making the show exactly like the game doesn't really add any variety to it, not necessarily creativity. So, yeah, it does make sense that each episode is different. And Nicholas suffers from the bleep test. And, so we know they're in a bit of a fight. We cut to Ellie being in a new character, Captain Kwong's office. He's clearly either the teacher or the instructee of this segment of the Fedra school facility, and he's there to tell Ellie off.
It's the way it cuts. It goes from Ellie throwing a punch to, like, her head back and, like, looking straight down on it, almost as if she's, like,
punched herself.
My instant assumption was, oh, she's just lost the fight. Like, she's waking up in the hospital wing or something. But no, she's just on the chair, chilling with her back.
I guess it's quite clever cinematography, isn't it? Because she throws the punch and we cut to black and then cut to her. So it's almost as though her punching herself is symbolic of, I guess, her creating fights is just creating damage to her, because it always comes back around. Bear in mind,
Bethany said, like, it's your friend that does the fighting. Like, implying that Ellie may maybe get involved in fights, but she's not the one who's actually doing the fighting.
Indeed.
So it's kind of nice bait and switch.
It is. And again, Captain Kwong comes in. He straightens Ellie's moved the picture of his family, his daughter and his wife, presumably. Turns the photo back around. So Ellie's not scared to invade people's private space, evidently. She's straight in there, looking through people's stuff, doing some scavenging maybe for what's coming up ahead. He describes, like, Ellie's recent behaviour as erratic, and that Bethany, poor Bethany, all she was doing was trying to get everyone to do some more laps nice and fast so they get to finish and hit the showers nice and early. She got 15 stitches from this. So Ellie's got one hell of a right hook, it would seem, on multiple right hooks.
Yeah, she's got a temper on her.
Oh, yes, we know that. Kwong explains he's not going to use the usual approach. This is almost like clever psychological tactics from a parent or a teacher, any kind of leader, manager you've had in your life, when they're not going to go down the route you expect them to go down.
They've been through this before. They've been through it before, and it's just not worked. Let's find a different route.
Yeah, he's almost like, look, I'm going to talk to you like an adult now. I could shout at you. As Ellie says straight away, doesn't she? Just throw me back in the hole. And he's like, look, I'm not going to do that. It hasn't worked the last 15 times. It ain't going to work now. So you're smart. You're so smart, you're stupid, he tells her, as he sits her down and says, like, look, he lays out what her options realistically are. He talks to her like an adult and says, you keep acting like a dickhead, you'll end up essentially like a grunt. You'll be doing the crap jobs, you'll have crap food, you'll be on the rubbish shifts, you'll probably die. I think, does he say you'll get your hair caught in like tank treads or something, or you'll get shot by a firefly? There's a bleak future if you keep going down avenue number 1. Or alternatively, option number 2, he puts down his keys on the table. You could swallow your damn pride, you can smarten up, you can do what you're told, and you could become an officer. And instead of getting bullied and attacked by Beth all the time, you could be telling her what to do. And he basically says, like, these are your 2 routes, the best one and the bad one. You'll eat well, you'll be warm in the winter, you won't have to do the shitty jobs, and you'll be in charge of idiots and grunts like Beth. So you've got the right answer.
Well, this is where I kind of liken Beth to like a sergeant figure, where she's kind of like the leader on the ground. Mm-hmm. So all the other grunts are all the other students running laps are subordinate to Beth. But Captain Kwong can see Ellie as it being an officer, so having a handful of Beths at her disposal. So she's sitting in a cushy office like Kwong is now, in the warm or cold, depending on the season, however she wants it, telling the likes of Beth to go out and go, right, you and your guys, you're going to patrol this wall because there's been firefly activity out there. Don't get killed, because I have to find someone else to replace you. That kind of situation is
absolutely. I know which one I'd rather be.
Yeah, definitely in the office.
the
I don't
cushy
like
job.
getting shot at.
Exactly. Did you notice on Kwong's key, when he puts his kind of pile of keys on the table as well, there's a little USB stick thing. It's got a little red paw print on, which is, of course, the Naughty Dog logo who made the game. I actually seen a few...
Not on first viewing. Second viewing I did.
I saw it on first viewing, and then I noticed a couple of YouTube channels that do Easter egg breakdowns didn't even pick up on it, so... Subtle as it comes. I'm sure there's loads laden throughout this episode, though. But yeah, Kwong explains to Ellie that basically they're your 2 options, and he does say, regardless of what people think about the Fedra soldiers, they are keeping this place together, and without them, people would starve, they'd murder and kill each other, essentially. And we kind of know that's true in some ways. When we've witnessed some of the things that go on in other quarantine zones, that as much as I guess Fedra come across as bad, and yes, I'm sure we learned in Kansas they're pretty much horrible people. There's nothing to say in this quarantine zone. They are keeping the food supply running, they're keeping people secure inside the walls, albeit with authority and maybe a iron fist. It might not be that bad. The grass isn't always greener, is what he's kind of trying to paint the picture for Ellie. They are not the bad guys.
I think Kwong's kind of admitting, look, we are at the moment the lesser of evils. We don't... If we took these structures that Fedra's built away, what would happen to these people? What would happen? Would it just... You could get a Kansas City situation where it just turns into a bloodbath.
Yeah.
Or, you could get a Jackson situation where people come together and find a way, but the more things like Fedra sees, the more in terms of violence and drugs and stealing and all the stuff that they keep trying to have them stamp down on, the harder it is for someone like Kwong, who is seen actually a good person.
Yeah.
I got the impression, and I think it was nice to show someone in Fedra who's a good person, where he probably doesn't agree with everything they're doing, but he doesn't see a better route, so he's committed to being there and to try and do the best he can for people like Ellie in this situation.
And this is what the show kind of keeps going back to, is it's about the relationships of individual people. We look at Captain Kwong in this scenario, and he's literally got a daughter and a wife at home. He obviously goes on, when everything popped off on Outbreak Day, the government stepped in to kind of save people, protect people from these crazy infected monsters running around. They built high walls. They have a steady supply of food. They still manufacture drugs. They're trying to keep some kind of authority, because remember what happens, Richie, when shit hits the fan: looting, riots, We saw the toilet paper in the real world disappear. You couldn't get your hands on damn toilet paper. Like, that's how crazy the world could be in a real scenario. It happened. We lived through it. And yet this guy, who evidently might have been a police officer or an army cadet potentially, is now in a school where essentially they're trying to raise people to protect the people in the quarantine zone from the crazy monsters outside. And people look at them as though they're horrible. They starve them, they beat them up, and again, I'm sure it happens to some degree.
There is some horrible
things
in there.
And you know what? That the same goes for the real world as well. Like, if like I hate the government, but essentially we need them to keep some form of order. Otherwise, you wouldn't get wages, you wouldn't have healthcare, all that other jazz we could go into.
The show's been very good at casting pretty much every faction and every character in just the moral grey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like Fedra. Yes, they've done some horrible stuff. Clearly, Kansas City was a particularly bad situation for Fedra. Even Boston, we've seen some bad situations.
Mm-hmm.
However, the people in Boston are relatively safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not in luxury. They are fed. As long as they're willing to work, they're seemingly fed. As long as they stick by the rules, they're kept safe. Things could be a lot worse. In fact, we know Boston's a particularly bad area. Like, Boston was one of the areas that literally got bombed because of the amount of infection there.
So the fact that it's got any sense of security still is quite surprising. And like we saw with Jackson last week, like, you're telling me everyone in Jackson's just hunky-dory, sunshine and rainbows, doing the job. No one fights or doesn't get along or anything.
Jackson was pretty much killing off anyone who came into contact with them who they didn't like, and then leaving their bodies by the river to scare off other people.
And you tell,
terrible reputation to spread, even though the people there seem decent.
And that's normal. So you're right. We get an interesting take on this show. There's no right or wrong.
We know Tommy's done some horrendous stuff.
Yeah, we all live in a grey area. But speaking of grey areas, we cut from Ellie choosing a path. She chooses the nice path, and she gets a Walkman back again. Captain Kwong doing some interesting psychological tactics on Ellie. He's like, you know what? I'm even going to give you your stuff back. There you go. She gets a Sony-sponsored Walkman. We cut to Ellie's room. She's reading some comics. We see a litany of things on her walls, dinosaur posters, space posters, kind of creating more about what we'll probably learn in the second season about what intrigues her. And we know from last week when she was talking to Joel on the horse, like, her absolute icon is Sally Ride, the astronaut as well. So we know what her interests are. She loves dinosaurs. She loves space. Two things I can very much relate to. They are very cool interests. She looks over to the bed. There's an empty bed. Clearly she shared accommodation with who we will soon learn to be Riley. She goes to sleep. Someone creeps in through a window. We hear eerie music. Someone's going to attack and sneak up on her. Hand over the mouth. She kicks off.
Something I've just noticed as well. Ellie's side of the room is covered in posters and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Riley's is not.
She's gone, that's why. They'll cleared it out for another trainee to be moved into. Yeah, she's been gone 3 weeks, remember?
Yeah.
So it'd be like if you were in a dorm at university, I guess they get the janitor in or something straight away and go, right, strip it out, clear it out. Because, again, this is a military school. They'll have new people potentially coming in. Then they've got no sentimentality when it comes to clearing out your locker.
If someone's disappeared, they'll probably have loads of girls disappear, and if someone's gone for maybe 2 weeks, you just get rid of the stuff.
Yeah.
They're done.
Even if she came back, they probably wouldn't keep her in the same room still. But she does come back, Richie, because she sneaks in. She tries to attack Ellie, covering her mouth. Ellie kicks her off, and they have a bit of an argument. But this is kind of where, for me, I would rather they went with the game version of it. Things, obviously, they didn't do it in the show, but in the video game, she pretends to bite Ellie. She pretends to be infected and jumps on her neck and goes like, and tries to bite at her neck. And Ellie absolutely flips out and grabs the knife from under her pillow and essentially nearly stabs Riley. Whereas in this one, it was a bit more like, I guess they don't want to foreshadow the biting element of it, because it will come into it later on. But
what they were doing in the game, they were foreshadowing it. But in here, I kind of took her putting a hand over her face, of kind of, what she's about to wake her up in the middle of the night. It's like 2:00 in the morning.
Don't scream.
Yeah, you're going to react. I'm going to keep you quiet till you realise what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. They argue about Riley being missing for 3 weeks. Ellie wants to know why, getting really irate about it. Riley explains that she's joined the Fireflies. Ellie doesn't believe her until she shows her a gun, which immediately kind of cements for Ellie that, oh shit, she really is a Firefly, which shows you how much weapons and ammunition, I guess, must be controlled in the QZ, that as soon as she sees that weapon, there's no other way Riley could get a weapon other than joining the Fireflies legitimately. So
I wonder why they switched to the gun rather than the pendant that they did in the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, we haven't really seen much of the show shadowing the Firefly pendants, because they are obviously one of the collectibles within the game that leads into a trophy. But that would have been an easy way.
Like it would have served to say it's just a MacGuffin to get Ellie to kind of believe what Riley's saying. But I think it would have been one. It's true to the game and the change. I don't see. It might have just been foreshadowing that Riley has a gun.
Yeah.
So it's like when it comes up later, it's not like where did she get it from? Like, or maybe it's just like kind of showing that Riley is comfortable with this kind of stuff, like that the Fireflies are doing. Well, I think showing the pendant would just been a bit more of a nod, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do wonder with the pendants sometimes as well, is if you have a pendant with a Firefly logo on and your name, if you get caught, there's no way of denying you're a Firefly when you literally have a serial code, the logo, and your name on a piece of metal around your neck. It's quite a blatant, like, yeah, you've been caught, you're done. When you encounter other Fireflies, it's proof that you are one. That is true as well. Or you killed someone and stole it. But either way, we digress. Yeah, Firefly pendants aside. Riley invites Ellie on the best night of her life, starting at 2 a.m. Ellie's not too keen on it because she's obviously up for her morning drills. I'm guessing Fedra trainees start at the crack of dawn, no doubt, military style.
It's going to be like a 5 o'clock wake up sort of thing. Get up and straight into some kind of cleaning routine or exercise, military drills. Riley doesn't take no for an answer. They have a little bit of banter about her where clearly Ellie is always going to do what Riley says. You can tell out of because Riley's a little bit older, you almost sense immediately that Ellie will follow in the footsteps of whatever Riley does. Kind of like big brother, little brother, sibling. Like the little kid always gets in trouble because they fall into a lot of shit because the older brother calls it, where it's like, Ellie, you're gonna say no, you're gonna argue about it, then you're gonna come anyway. Like almost like, can we just skip that bit? Yeah, let's skip to the good part. They hop down the ladder out the window. Ellie, they almost immediately get caught. And Ellie, interesting enough, as an addition for the show, as Ellie says, it would have almost been as bad as the 7-Eleven situation where she lost some of her eyebrow. And I just thought that was a nice, interesting additive line for the show because Ellie's always got that kind of famous scar that cuts through one of her eyebrows, and we don't ever learn about that. So the show addresses that. Some shit went down in the past with Riley and a 7-Eleven, which, if I'm not mistaken, 7-Elevens are like American petrol stations, right? Gas stations. Yeah, like just a corner shop that sells like Mountain Dew and fuel and gas and whatnot. There's an interesting thing that Ellie does. Bear in mind, Ellie and Riley are roommates, close friends, and you can presume they've been roommates for a long time. She makes Riley turn around when she gets ready. It's showing her kind of innocence. Not innocence, because you think like if you're just friends and roommates, you probably wouldn't care that much. True. Like, it's showing there's maybe something else there. Yeah, Ellie's wanting to hide away with like Riley seeing her basically in her underwear. Yeah, that's a good assumption. Yeah, obviously, they've lived together for some time, so and Riley addresses it. Yeah, kind of weird like that. Yeah, what the hell? But yeah, Riley warns Ellie of messing with people like Beth. You kind of have this again protective kind of older sibling element where Riley says like. Asks again, was it Beth who gave you the black eye? She says back, she gave her stitches, and then Ellie calls out Riley saying, you can't basically call me out for attacking someone when you put a random person called Carol in the infirmary for a week. We don't know who Carol is, but shout out to Carol. You got put in the infirmary for a week because of something Riley did to you. I don't know. Let's assume she's Riley and Ellie seem like bit sizes and Fedra. And you know how kids are, they pick on the weird ones, so it's just like I'm guessing it's just a note that Carol was probably just being a bitch. Yeah, Carol probably aimed at Ellie. And we know what Ellie likes her protective figures like Joel and Riley. Riley stepped in, probably where she's got the reputation from not fighting because it was Riley fucked up Carol, not Ellie. Yeah, maybe in defense of Ellie though. For all we know, I mean that's my assumption. That it was in defense of Ellie. And then Riley lays down some strong kind of understanding for Ellie and says, you can't fight everything and everyone. Because we know this is kind of going to become a trait in Ellie's kind of psyche that she's always up for a fight regardless of who it is. We saw it in the game with like Bill. She like wants to fight Bill almost immediately when you come across him in the game. And she was defensive against Joel in the show. Remember, like she pulled a knife on him immediately and he threw her against the wall and she was like angry towards him.
immediately, and it just seems to be a trend for her character. So Riley actually laying down the rules of saying, look, Ellie, you can't always fight everything and everyone. You need to like tone it down a little bit as you get older, giving her that kind of mature take on things. Don in the chat does point out that 7-Eleven, Richie, is just a convenience store. It does not sell gas. Bet it sells like really bad hot dogs, like 10-day-old hot dogs that have been out in those dry and rotisserie things.
When you're drunk would be amazing, but if you saw those, like, you just wouldn't go anywhere near it.
Yeah, probably. We cut to the interior of a building. They have a little joke about Firefly torches being better. Again, a little bit of banter back and forth about Ellie almost like defending Fedra and saying they're better, and Riley saying, ha, Firefly torches are better. And we see this now over the next kind of rest of the episode of them always going back and forth. It is
one thing that's between them.
Yeah, the girls climb several floors. They have a joke about being 2 to 7 floors, in fact. And then they randomly find a dead guy in the corridor, and Riley explains that he wasn't there yesterday, so he's fresh. This is a fresh dead guy. Not infected, though. Not infected. They obviously approach him as you would with any dead body in this kind of world, Richie. They both immediately approach him. No kind of... Does Riley even get a gun out at this point? I don't think so. Yeah. Seemingly, he died of an overdose of pills and alcohol. We see those little plastic bags that Joel had in episode 1, I think, 1 or 2, getting them from the Fedra agent. So he's overdosed on drugs and he's mixed it with, I want to say whiskey or bourbon or something they're drinking.
Some sort of dark alcohol. Could be a whiskey, could be rum. I'm
just going to go with whiskey for the sake of it.
I'd assume whiskey.
Yeah. From the old world, they point out when Ellie picks it up, it's original bottle. It's not moonshine, so this is some good shit. And this guy must have sold all of his credit tokens, all of his food vouchers for the good shit.
He's made his decision. It's like, I'm going to go out. I'm going to spend all my money on just a really nice bottle of whiskey. I'll get some pills off Joel. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take all the pills and just sit here in a random corridor out the way where no one will probably find me.
Yeah.
And just drink myself into oblivion.
Yeah. And he doesn't even drink that much. Poor bastard. No. He dies very, very quickly, eyes wide open. Yeah, it's not a nice way to go, seemingly. But the girls talk about, did he not realise he shouldn't be mixing the two? Ellie says that he clearly made his decision up. And then, like a cartoon, Richie, it's almost as though someone comes up and cuts with a saw around the exact spot where the body is. It falls through the floor. Kind of made me laugh a little bit of how, you hear a couple of creaks in the floorboard and then woo-jump. Like, would this really happen in any building other than like a Home Alone, Kevin McAllister style building? Who knows? But body drops through the floor. Immediately they cut to the girls laughing about it. Ellie's gets some kick out of the body falling through the floor, which I guess in that scenario, if it was you and me and we were kids dicking around, would we find it funny after we've got out of there that it just got sucked into the floor?
But we've grew up in normal times.
That's true.
They've grew up in fucked up times, like more fucked up than now times. But so it's... The fact that there's a body there is not that weird to them. Yeah, that's true. They may or may not have seen one before. So it's like they're more curious rather than, oh my god, there's a body. Who do we ring? Like, if me and you stumble across a body, like we're ringing ambulances, we're ringing the police. It's a big fucking deal. Oh, we just leg it. People die all the time. That's true. They steal the booze and they share it on the rooftops. Weirdly enough, I said this to my wife when we were watching it, Richie. Maybe not drink the substance that you've just found next to a dead body so freely. Like, he could have drank something and the drink in the bottle could have been the thing that actually killed him. They're presuming it was the pills and alcohol. But the pills and the wine. Yeah, and they're just like, let's share it between us. The kids. 5 minutes later, Ellie Riley, both dead on the rooftop from the same thing. Could you imagine? I mean, the kids and... They're both going on a date. They're not sure whether they want to call it a date. And alcohol, that'll make the situation go easier. We all know how that works. Yeah, they share the booze together, showing how brave they both are, taking swigs. Like I'm a 33-year-old man. I fucking hate whiskey, especially straight. And these two put on a brave face and go, delicious, delicious. It's a bit of an acquired taste. It certainly is. They share the booze together, talk about dead bodies, and Riley re-explains, I should say, to Ellie that the first set bodies she ever saw were her parents. And we don't really see much into Riley's backstory, but evidently she had a mum and a dad, and they died at some point in the past.
and which sets her up for, I guess, being an orphan in the same school that Ellie's at. So that there is a history there with those two. Ellie immediately continues the conversation, breaks away and says she wants to hold Riley's pistol, which is kind of what we've seen with her character so far in all events of the show. She's pestered Joel for like 5 episodes now about, can I have a gun? Can I have a gun? And she's obsessed with, again, just like a weapons or violence or something along these lines. Riley lets her hold it for a very brief moment. She doesn't let her aim with it. She doesn't let her check the cartridge. She just gets to hold it and go, ooh, this is heavy, which, yeah, real guns are.
I think part of it could be like growing up in a Fedra school. She's been taught like a lot of things from Fedra, basically growing up to be a soldier. But she's probably not old enough to have actually had weapons training or anything yet.
No, probably not. She's just fitness and such.
Riley probably has. So if they're doing weapons training, like probably when they're maybe, I don't know, 15, 16, Ellie's like 14.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like growing up, she's listening to Riley talk about weapons training and like, so might be just a bit of fascination comes from that. And then,
yeah.
Obviously, it's a fucked up world. It's like, who wouldn't want a gun? I'm usually like kind of like not fond of guns in the real world. However, in this situation, I'd be very fond of guns.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And yeah, you'd imagine even in the Fedra school, even with weapons training, they probably have to lock them all away at night time for like security reasons and such. They don't like walk around the campus carrying sidearms. And
Fedra guns and ammo is probably a rare resource.
Yeah, even though we do know so they make them in a factory.
They'll probably get limited training on it.
Absolutely. Riley explains again, we get a bit more back and forth between the two different worlds they live in, and Riley explains that she joined the Fireflies because of the fascist dickbags. I'll quote that, fascist dickbags that are the Fedra agents. And this is kind of where we see Ellie almost get a bit defensive over Fedra, and she kind of echoes some thoughts of what Captain Kwong just explained to her earlier that very day about the two paths that she could go down. And she almost she refutes some of the points and saying, you know what, maybe Fedra aren't that bad. Like there's no right or wrong. There's no easy way to put yourself in one camp or the other in this side, because obviously Riley's very much into the Firefly world right now. She spent 3 weeks with them, and they have a little joke back and forth about kind of propaganda and what it means for each side, who is right, who is wrong. And we're going to see it develop through the episode, but you can almost see the two characters diverging and going down different paths.
I think you can take this as a bit of commentary regarding like political division, how binary choices are, where actually these two, both young people, and actually going, well, you can see the propaganda on both sides. Ellie's currently leaning towards Fedra, Riley's leaning towards the Fireflies, but they're fine with each other. Like, they're able to talk about this stuff without it getting just like, you're on the wrong side, I'm on the wrong side, let's just shout at each other.
And that comes from the naivety of just youth, I guess, right? You don't really understand the ramifications of what you're doing or what you're talking about. You just do what you're being told and you buy into one thing over the other.
And what's Ellie's experience to the Fireflies? Hearing about Fireflies attacking Fedra agents and blowing stuff up. Mm-hmm. That's probably, and seeing graffiti occasionally.
Absolutely, and we see that.
That's all she knows, really.
We see that in the conversation when I think she references them being starved of food, and Ellie very much points out that they wouldn't be starved of food if one of their depots wasn't attacked by bombs last week. So it's like, you've got both sides of it. Yeah, they might not be as starved for food if people went randomly attacking their food supplies. It's
not like Ellie's defending Fedra. She's just going like, well, you need to present an alternative.
Yeah, but...
And as it stands, that all the Fireflies seem to be presenting is not Fedra.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, propaganda to the max. And Riley, again, brings them eventually to a mall. They do a few rooftop hopping, and they get there and they hop down, make a loud noise when they enter it, by the way, considering I know Riley knows it's empty, presumably, but yeah, they're dropping down to these big metal cabinets, and even I'm watching at home going like, shh, keep it down, ladies, like you don't know what's in this hole. Riley gives Ellie some instructions to just head a little bit deeper, take a right down the corridor, and again, we get a moment when Ellie says like, why should I listen to you? And Riley, being that older, more mature character who Ellie clearly looks up to, just goes, look, you're going to do what I tell you to do. Go right down the corridor, along, through the doors, and wait. And Ellie kind of just immediately gives up and says, yeah, okay. And she does it. And I think she flippantly jokes about, this would be a perfect place to murder me if you wanted to. And she's like, I know that. She walks out, she waits in the dark. A torch doesn't work anywhere, and then we kind of see we hear the power come back on, and then classic movie style lights, Richie. Jun, 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 jun. We see them all come on. The whole place lights up like a Christmas tree. Great shot for me. This is like the one of the best shots in the whole episode, when we just kind of see the camera cuts to Ellie after the corridors in the mall start to light up, and we just see the absolute awestruck wonder in her face as she's kind of revealed to something she's never seen before in her life.
Massive credit here to the visual effects team. Because I listened to the Last of Us podcast earlier today. I didn't know the entire top floor of the mall was CGI.
Was it?
Yeah, basically, Ellie, there's a bit, the director, I think Neil Druckmann, or the show, who's the name of the show?
Craig Mazin's the showrunner.
Craig
Mazin.
They talk about in, like, they found a mall in Calgary that was getting knocked down, which was like a perfect location for shooting, but it was only one floor. It had one escalator, and at the top of the escalator there was basically nothing. It was like, I think there's one or two shops, and then like just like a concrete wall. So like a lot of this was done from reference work of like other malls, and like composited in.
Yeah.
And it's mainly for this shot they did it, but because they wanted it for this shot, because even in the UK, when you think of a shopping mall, you think 2-story.
Yeah, that's the standard.
Walkway down the middle, like it's just how you vision it. So that's what they wanted. They wanted to be true to it. So because of this one shot, they pretty much committed to doing for every single shot in the mall through an entire episode, which has pretty much every shot in the mall.
Yeah.
CGIing the top half.
And it worked. It worked. The absolute...
I didn't realise till the podcast, and when they explained, it's like, I thought it was real.
Yeah,
that's why
I would have bought
shout the visual effects team, because they've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, they really have. And yeah, we see that, and Riley explains that she's going to show Ellie the 4 wonders of the mall. And we start off with electric stairs, Richie, aka escalators. And Ellie thinks this is the first one. Of course, the power's back on, and it's something so little. But you know what? Anyone in the chat right now, or who's watching along at home or listening later on podcast services, you tell me as a child you've never messed around on an escalator. You're lying to yourself. You're lying to everyone who you know, because we've all done it. We've all stretched our legs and gone too far. We've all thought our shoelaces were going to get caught at the top and we're going to be dragged to our death. We've all done it. We've walked up backwards. We've walked up slowly. We've hung on to the side rail. I nearly got killed in the Toys R Us in New York on the escalator because I sat on it and it nearly took me off and dropped me 2 floors down. So we've all messed around on escalators, on electric stairs, as we should say.
It must be mind-boggling for Ellie as well. Bear in mind, power's a precious resource.
Oh, 100%.
In this world, imagine the amount of power cuts and stuff that the show doesn't really go into, and she just sees them. What in the past they used to use electricity on stairs. On stairs. Why would you waste electricity, this precious resource, on stairs?
Hey, in the real world right now, if you go to an airport, I haven't seen those travelator stairs running for the last several trips I've been on. So even in today's world, we don't even run the escalators properly. So
in
yes.
some ways, like, do you need them?
No, probably not.
I mean, they get you around faster and they're cool to walk on when you're walking like super fast.
Yeah, you get that run up to it, and then you come off and you have to stop yourself. See, we're laughing now. Escalators are fun. Fact.
Oh yeah, they are.
We're introduced to the escalators, and aka the first wonder of them all, with also the introducing to the music of "Take on Me" by Aha, and of course this will play probably a sentimental piece of season 2. For those who played the video game, we know it's a song that Ellie plays to one of her friends in the video game part 2 in a more acoustic version. It was in the trailer for the show before it was initially broadcast, and I'm surprised they used it at this point. I thought they would have maybe kept it for a more emotional beat either next season or later in this season. But again, we're in a mall, it's 80s music, and if we learn anything from Bill and Frank, Richie, what does 80s music mean? Danger. But we continue on our adventure through the mall after Ellie nearly falls off and knocks Riley off. We get a bit of, again, friendly banter as they bump into each other. We get some cameos in the mall from Foot Locker. Shout out to the Body Shop. We haven't had a body shop in our town for many, many years now, but I used to like going in and smelling the soap, so I'm going to shout out the Body Shop.
I like walking. I never like going in. I always felt it was like too intense when you're inside. Walking past is always nice.
I just used to get dragged with my parents. I used to just like sniffing the different coloured soaps. Not like sniff, like full on thingy. They used to give sample ones out, like they do in Lush. Yeah, just like, ooh, apple, ooh, lemon. Yeah, it makes me sound like a weirdo. I was a child. enjoying escalators and soaps. Let me be me.
Child, he did this last week.
This morning, actually. And Victoria's Secret gets a cameo as the girls, of course, talk about life before the outbreak and what it was like to, I guess, wear certain clothes, do your hair, dress a certain way. Because I think Ellie in the game actually mentions it to a kind of a pin-up model on the wall in one of the streets to Joel. And she's like, is that really what they look like? Why were they so skinny when food was readily available? And again, the whole world of kind of models and superstars and celebrity is probably totally lost on these girls. It means nothing to them. They haven't lived in that world. It's all alien, and it doesn't make any sense. Like Ellie says in the game, is why was she that skinny when food was plentiful?
It's marketing, really, when you think about them sort of industries. Like, it's all marketing. This is how you should look. These are the things these people are beautiful. This is how they do it. This is what they have to do it. This is so you should do that. This is what you need to wear to look like that. Yeah,
and again, these stores picked out for specific reasons. She says about clothes over soap, and then she has a little joke about, I think Riley says when the outbreak day happened, people ransack things for priority items, like you would think food, water, electricity. No, Foot Locker, raided. Sneakers, gone.
Lingerie is essential.
Absolutely critical. If you don't wear something red and lacy in the outbreak, you're doing it wrong. And this kind of looking in the Victoria's Secret window leads Ellie to, I don't know if you noticed, she kind of sorts her hair out, tidies it up a little bit, and she sees her reflection in the window and goes, oh, maybe I do need to make a bit of an effort for this date that they're on.
After Riley makes a joke of a stain because she starts laughing and goes, oh, I was picturing you wearing it.
Mm-hmm. So very suspicious thought process.
And then Ellie gets a bit self-conscious like that. It's like, oh, you're picturing me wearing this.
Sort
it's
my
quite
hair
revealing underwear as well, so exactly.
And Ellie won't even get changed in front of her in normal underwear.
It's not like a pair of long johns.
Absolutely. They both exchange some playful glances and they're giggling around. But they kind of head on. Riley shouts and she gets dragged out to the next part, the next wonder of them all, Richie. She tells her to close her eyes. She guides her with her hand again. Do you trust me? Trust me with your life. What she revealed to them? A carousel. Turns it on, you get these beautiful horses, million lights, as they say, and they both hop onto the horses. This is, again, very key, critical part of the video game. We get to see Ellie basically, I'd say in this moment, she's just so infatuated with Riley. You can see her on the horse going back and forth, and the music kind of swells up. It tones down the sounds, and you can basically just see Ellie just adoring Riley as they bob up and down on these carousels, these horses, I guess. And it's a very touching moment where you can clearly see that there's something in their relationship here. Or from Ellie's point of view, there's definitely something.
Ellie straight up gets her mind blown because she sees like the carousel, it's already lit. It's like walks up to it, and then Riley turns and is like, "What?"
Yep.
It moves.
I mean, if you think the escalator was impressive, this is mechanical horses going in a circle with music and flashing lights. Which it was I listened to this. It was the music in the background on the carousel. It's actually a song from The Cure. But it's like a weird carnival version of it, which, again, the showrunners go to great lengths to incorporate 80s music into this show.
I think it's like the themes of the song fit perfectly, so it's like, how do we work it in?
And I didn't notice it, to be fair, when I was listening, but it's nice to know they added it in. The girls laugh and they share some more whiskey. They joke about being drunk, which we've all been there with our friends when we're young and we're starting to explore alcohol for the first time. It's like, you're drunk. No, you're drunk. And you're both really shit-faced. That's the reality of it. And
either both really shit-faced or you're just slightly tipsy.
You don't know what's going on.
Clue.
Absolutely. So Ellie clearly infatuated. The ride abruptly stops, and then again Ellie gets back to that kind of. You can almost tell every one of these scenes is biting away at that the reality of Riley is going to be a Firefly, and she stops her again and says, like, look, why are you leaving? Why are you doing this? And Riley explains that she's 17 now. Captain Kwong's already give her job title of what she will be when she leaves the academy, and that is going to be a grunt on sewage detail. So cleaning up shit, being watched over by a Beth-like officer, being told what to do for essentially the rest of her life, potentially.
It's not even just a grunt. It's a you're the grunt who watches people clean shit. That's it. The sort of jobs that Joel takes. Yeah,
Joel was doing them in the episode.
Yeah.
Grim, to say the least.
And probably some of the more dangerous jobs as well. Going into the sewer system, where the infected like to hang out.
Quite possibly. And Riley finally asks Ellie, like, do you want to see the remaining wonders? Because there's a few more. And I love the quote from Ellie where she's like, I'm on a magic horse with 1 million likes. How can it get any better? The girls go and explore the photo booth, which is, again, it's a great moment from the video game that they incorporate. Couple of things that they change differently from the game. There's a fun Facebook joke in the video game one when it says, at the time on the PS3, you could share your photos to your Facebook account. And obviously that doesn't happen now. It's not, PlayStation isn't linked to Facebook in any way. But yeah, you could hit that. And in the game, I think she says, like, they both laugh over, like, what's a Facebook? And it's like, yeah, the word just means nothing if you didn't know what it was. In the show, though, however, the photos do print out. In the game, they don't develop. I mean, in the show, they don't develop either. We see them print out and they kind of look at them and go, hasn't really worked. Which did make me think, I think I said to the wife out loud, like the chemicals in the photographic paper, they would have just disintegrated over time. So, like, immediately you just presume, like, the photo booth's been untouched. The pictures will be spectacular. But no, photos like that are based on chemicals, and they won't have mixed properly, and especially because it looks like a Polaroid shot, right? So, yeah. So they haven't developed, but they do have a little chuckle about it. And again, we get some of sentimental moment of, like, Riley leaning into Ellie, and they're almost doing that kind of playful flirting where you kind of tickle each other, you're punching each other, you're leaning, like, you can tell they both have feelings for each other, but neither of them wants to admit it just yet. So they're just going to have playful banter back and forth, little tickles here and there, pushes, pokes, shoves, that kind of thing. And Ellie at one point says, like, I'll get off me while they're posing for the pictures. They move on to...
I think Ellie getting a bit self-conscious about how, like, touchy-feely Riley's being.
Yeah, what are you doing? Get off me. Like, that kind of gist. We move on.
Get off me. Like, no, don't actually. You don't have to.
No, don't stop. We move on to one of the next wonders of the mall. We hear some noises in the distance. Then we cut to Raj's arcade, and Ellie says it's the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. Shout out before we get into it, Raj's arcade. Do you know the Easter egg reference, Richie?
Yes. Was it one of the side characters in Uncharted?
Side characters, how dare you? This is Eddie Raja from Uncharted 1, the original one. This is Nathan Drake's nemesis, who unfortunately lose to the creatures in Uncharted 1 down one of the halls, and he shouts out Eddie, and he gets dragged away.
It's been too long.
This is a Naughty Dog Easter egg for the original Uncharted game.
We have the platinum in Uncharted 2, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Any of the other platinums?
There you go. And we said on this week's Talking the PS podcast, like, we're both hoping for an Uncharted 1, 2, 3 potential remaster. Yeah. So go check out this week's Talking the PS episode live now if you want to hear our in-depth thoughts about a new Uncharted game. But I digress. Let's go back to some old games from back in the day, Richie. We see in this fantastic-looking arcade games like Frogger, games like Tetris, Galaga, and Daytona. I remember that game. That takes me back to the arcade, Daytona, USA. And
they've even got, like, the traditional arcade carpet.
It's very, very stained and sticky, covered in chewing gum parts, no doubt. But yeah, we get a slew of arcade machines, and Riley came prepared with the coin machine. She's already broke it out, and Ellie and basically the two girls get to go and explore the mall, which is, again, could you imagine, Richie? You get to explore an abandoned mall, you get to explore on elevators, go on carousels, not an adult or another person in sight. It's all yours, and then you get an arcade centre that's completely free. No limits, no insert coins stopping your fun. Just have at it all the time in the world.
These insert coins,
they just have the coins. Yeah, they just have the coins. And the girls play, of course, Mortal Kombat 2, which we know references an earlier episode of the season when we stumbled across a broken one in the shop when Joel and Ellie are exploring the scavenging for one of Joel's caches, and they find it and she references it.
Ellie's wall, actually.
It is, yeah. Mortal Kombat 2, of course. We mentioned in a previous episode of this show about the impact of Mortal Kombat 2 on the games industry and how the sheer violence in it is what led to the age rating system we have now in around the world. And it was very particular that they picked this game and replaced it with the fictional one in the video game. So Mortal Kombat 2, they have a fight within the game, not in real life yet. Riley kicks Ellie's ass completely, and she already knows about the fatality move, which... I played Mortal Kombat back on the Sega Mega Drive back in the day, and similar to today's world, you and me, I don't think we're great at fighting games because there's too many combos. I can't put them to memory, and you can tell the way Riley kicks Ellie's ass in this. Riley's been here before. She's practiced. She knows the special fatality moves. I could never do them. in Mortal Kombat. I ended up just waiting around until the time runs out, and then it just goes KO wins. Riley knows what she's doing. She's got an ace up her sleeve. The girls keep playing away until the camera, Richie, pans away from the arcade. The music gets more ominous, and we lead into a creepy toy shop to an infected person sitting on the floor, part of the Mushroom Kingdom, stuck to the wall. He wakes up. And in the Left Behind game, this is very reminiscent of the guy who you see in the toy shop when you're looking for stuff, scavenged stuff to heal Joel. You find this kind of the exact same man stuck in the corner of the wall, and you have to get a key out of his pocket. And yeah, you kind of crunch him away from the wall, and he's not dead in this one, but he's dead in the game. What do you think of this? It was always going to happen, right? They weren't going to be able to go through a mall without problems, without consequence.
Yeah, I as well. I like how there's only really one of them. They don't overdo it. It's something they've been quite reserved with, apart from like the end of episode 5. Was it 5 or 6? When they've brought in the bloater and just literally a horde, they've largely kept the numbers down to keeps the threat level up. It's not doing the whole Walking Dead thing where they get to see so
hundreds of them.
It gets to the point where the characters just seemingly just walk past and go, "Hi there," and just sees the hordes walk by, and it's like they don't no longer feel like a threat. They still do. Like one of them's enough. Like they don't. There's more in the game, but the game's a lot more action focused.
Yeah. But we see that we pan back to the violence of the game. Ellie, they go for another match, and they kind of see the character Melina suck up the person, KO them, and spit out their guts. Which again, another part of Ellie being obsessed with violence. She absolutely loves it. They're having such a good time, and then Ellie again has this another sobering moment. This is like the second or third time she's had that moment of, oh shit, this is Riley's last night, and she calls her out again and says like, look, it's getting late, I have to go. And I think this is like their third attempt to maybe cut the night short, and very quickly Ellie's resolve is swayed so easily with the promise of Riley says she's got her a gift. And just like that, Ellie's like, oh, you've got me a gift, hey? Okay, I'm back in. I was about to leave, but I'm back in. It's like when you try and leave us at the end of the night, Richie, and we say, one more round, one more shot, one more drink for the road, and you're like, God damn it, I'm still staying out later. Cut to 4 in.
And then usually, to be honest, I'm usually falling asleep on my feet at some point in the night.
Red Bull. But yes.
I try it sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But this is what I mean, kind of like there's these many points of like almost like no return, where it's like branching pathways where these characters get given these choices. Like, does Ellie several times Ellie contemplates leaving. Does she leave or does she stay? And she keeps choosing to stay.
She does, to a detriment. Ellie rattles off what she thinks may be a present. Is it a dinosaur? Riley's got her, and that's a nice throwaway comment to, again, The Last of Us Part 2 in the game when Ellie's trying to guess what gift Joel's got her, which I won't go into here. But yeah, is it a dinosaur? Have you got me this? Is it an alien? All that kind of stuff. The girls enter a Macho Nacho fast food joint within the mall. Any idea what Macho Nacho is from, Richie?
Should I know?
You probably won't. You didn't get the Eddie Raja one on the head necessarily. Elena from Uncharted has a throwaway comment to Nate in Uncharted 4, I believe, or 3, when she says when she was in school, she had a part-time job at a Macho Nacho. So more world building from Uncharted. It is a deep cut. I
should have got Eddie Raja.
It is a deep cut. So yeah, Macho Nacho, I'd imagine the Naughty Dog equivalent to a Taco Bell. Ellie jokes that she's getting tacos. Riley presents Ellie with, ta-da, the sequel to her favourite joke book. I was going to say Joel book then. She hasn't even met him yet, and she doesn't have a book on him. Favourite joke book, the sequel. The girls share some jokes, and they have a genuine great time. They're laughing about some of the terrible puns in this book. Obviously, still probably drunk or tipsy at this time, and they have a good chuckle about it. How does a computer get drunk, Richie? Screenshots. And what do you call an alligator in a vest? We don't find out. We don't find out, but yes, an investigator is the punchline.
I think the whole screenshot one, I think they probably picked that because they didn't have the Facebook kind of confusion in.
Possibly.
It kind of serves a similar purpose, like, what's one of them?
Yeah.
Like,
One of the best parts I do enjoy about Ellie's jokes throughout the video game is that there's a lot of jokes. It's almost like 1 in 4, 1 in 5, because of the timeline and the era in which they're set. They don't understand the punchlines because they haven't witnessed them. Like the context of the joke doesn't make sense because they're either too young and naive, or it's from a time when they don't know what computers were. So yeah, screenshots doesn't make sense. So the joke almost for the audience has a deeper meaning because we get the joke as the audience because I know what computers, I know what screenshots are, but then it's doubly funny because the characters in the show are like, how do they not get that? But they wouldn't know. So again, it kind of lands on 2 comedic beats for me with the puns, and I hope to keep it up throughout the show. And then immediately we don't hear the punchline. Ellie never learns what you call an alligator in a vest, Richie, because she finds Riley's stash of pipe bombs, and we get another sobering realization from Ellie that, oh shit, you are a Firefly now. You will be using these bombs to kill my colleagues, essentially. My friends, not that she has any friends, but the people back at Fedra who she lives and sleeps with every single day. Captain Kwong, you're going to be chucking pipe bombs at us at some point in the future, and that is not good.
Again, Ellie's fear is being alone. Within Fedra, she's at least not alone. She might not like the people. She might not even like the organisation, what they stand for, how they work. But she's with people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's not necessarily alone, although she kind of is alone when she's in Fedra.
Yeah. But she's not been exposed, you'd imagine, isolated at this point to, like, murdering people with bombs. Like, she might be shoveling shit and running around in a gym with a Walkman, but she's not been exposed to probably straight up throwing bombs at people.
You'd imagine fascist dickheads like Fedra would very much keep their fascist dickheads away from the orphans.
100%.
They would. It's the amount of propaganda that's been taught. Riley's obviously seen the reality of what Fedra is as an organisation from an outside perspective, because Riley's a bit older.
From a certain point of view.
And Riley is old enough to remember her parents dying, so she's probably old enough to see Fedra's take over. So she's probably a bit more aware of what they are than Ellie, who is seemingly, as far as we know at this point, is only known existence with Fedra in charge.
Absolutely. And I've put in our comments here, this is my Fox and the Hound moment. Have you seen the Fox and the Hound, Richie? There's seminal Disney movie from like 1995 or something like that, if not earlier. So I said to my wife at the moment, it reminds me of The Fox and the Hound. So if anyone's not seen The Fox and the Hound, it's an old Disney cartoon animated movie where essentially there's a fox and a hound, as you can imagine, and they're best friends. And they grow up as kids, like Ellie and Riley here, and they're totally innocent to the wider world and what goes around them. And they go their separate ways. The hound becomes a hunting hound dog. The fox lives out his life as an adult fox, doing what foxes do. And they reconnect later on in the movie. And obviously the dog has to do what the dog does and hunt down the fox. And they come across and bad things happen. And it's almost like Ellie and Riley in this moment was like that moment of her finding the pipe bombs was that moment of realization that these two people, this fox and the hound, they can't be friends anymore. They've got two very different lives. The organisations they're committed to, their families essentially, they do not get along. As much as they're
they're going to be on the opposite sides of the battlefield.
Yeah, as innocent as they are as children, when it comes to it, and again, go watch Fox and the Hound. It's a great movie. It's a bit of an old one out there, but I'm sure it's on Disney Plus. But yeah, this is the moment when I was like, shit, they know
Riley,
the future.
At this point, has put aside her innocence. Ellie hasn't yet.
Yeah.
So there's also that kind of thing. There's like, well, you're involved in this now. It's like Riley as well. Protest's going, I wouldn't let them hurt you. So it's like Ellie straight up calls her out and is like, which I think Ellie was right to do so, because like, does Riley, as probably the newest member of the Fireflies, have any authority to tell any of the other Fireflies, oh, see that girl over there? Just leave that one alone.
Yep.
Ain't happening.
Yep. And this is just like...
Especially something with a pipe bomb. It's not like...
It's serious. Serious. Yeah. And this is just like Fox and the Hound, Richie. All the other dogs are like, it's a fox. Go kill a fox. He's like, but he's my friend. He doesn't do anything. He's like, he kills chickens. He's a bad animal. Go hunt him down. And again, you can't stop the others from doing it till the train hits you. Spoilers for Fox and the Hound. But anyway, we digress. Ellie demands to know why Riley brought her to the mall. After she stormed off, and she exclaims that She's leaving tonight for the QZ, Atlanta QZ. Shout out to Atlanta, where the first episode of The Walking Dead took place, on orders from Marlene. And Ellie's like, who the fuck's Marlene? She's like, it's not important who Marlene is yet. We know as an audience who Marlene is. She's the damn leader of the Fireflies. But she demands why you brought it to me all. And Riley says, I wanted to say goodbye. It's as simple as that. I went through all this trouble, coming back, sneaking my way back into Boston QZ to see you, just to say goodbye. And Ellie says a simple short goodbye, and she leaves. Clearly angry, she kicks a bin over. Music swells up.
None of this was even about me.
No,
it's that kind of like.
Yeah.
No, this was about you. This was about you getting closer. I thought you took me here to give me this like really nice experience, and this actually you're doing this for yourself.
Yeah, both girls clearly visibly upset. Ellie's tears running down her face. She storms off, retraces her steps back to the mall. And there's that moment where we've all done it when we've had arguments with our loved ones, when you have just that moment for pause and you go, do I really want to leave things like this? Do I want to end the night like this? Do I want to walk out that storm out the house like this? Whatever it may be. And you go, kind of your senses kick back in and go, no, we don't want it to end like this. And you turn around, you suck up your courage, you put on a brave face, and you go back to either say sorry or reconcile your differences or take their side or agree to them, whatever it may be. Ellie does that. She takes a deep breath and she goes like, nah, fuck it. She turns back around, goes back through those double doors and heads back to where she thinks Riley is, until, Richie, we hear a scream. Oh, we've remembered we're in a horror movie, TV show where bad shit happens, and there was a clicker somewhere. So again, as an audience, we're immediately like set into panic stations.
Ellie's full-on strop walk as well.
Oh, perfect teenage girl.
It's not a run, but it's like a fast walk, and she just
absolutely. And in that moment, again, our daughter's due later this month. My first child, and me and the wife were like, there's going to be a day when our daughter does that stomp out the room walk because of something we've said and done. And yeah, it's exactly that. Perfect acting from Bella Ramsey there to show just an absolute stroppy teenager who's not happy. But Ellie doesn't want to leave things there. She hears the scream, she goes back, and the screams are actually from a skeleton in a Halloween shop. And again, another amazing throwback to the video game element. The Halloween shop is a big part. You get to explore it, walk around, try on some different masks, just learn about, again, what the girls would perceive Halloween to be, because Halloween in their world will not be a thing. People do not go around knocking on doors getting sweets and candy and stuff, because it just doesn't. So all these monsters and masks and pumpkins and stuff, which, remember, in the United States, they take Halloween very, very seriously compared to us over here in the UK. It is a big national holiday. So for them to go into a full shop and experience like zombies, ghouls, monsters, it must be so fun. And Ellie in the video games absolutely loves it. It's like on top of like dinosaurs and space, that's like another passion of hers. So I'm glad that they managed to get this into here. And it's also funny that Riley was perfectly fine. She just sat on the floor. She wasn't being attacked.
I actually love how Ellie uses the joke book as an excuse. Like, it's one of them situations, right? It's a perfect. They've clearly had an argument. I'm going back because we need to resolve this properly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I need a terrible excuse. I've come back for the joke book. Come back for my present. Where both of the people know, like, that's not why you're back. We just accept that as the premise. And now let's talk.
Yeah, so she gets back, the girls sit down, they kind of reconcile about Riley leaving forever, and Riley gives her reasons for it, and she says she basically wants to belong again. She had a parent, she had a family, and ever since her parents passed away or died or murdered or whatever it was, she's basically said she hasn't like felt belonging to people, and the Fireflies are giving her that opportunity to be part of something bigger. And you kind of think, you can obviously feel for Riley, and Ellie accepts that. At this moment, Ellie goes, she understands. She hates it, she's distraught about it, but she understands as a friend. It's almost like if you love something enough, Richie, you've got to set it free. You've got to let it go.
She's angry, but she does understand. It's that conflict. I mean, everyone gets it. Like,
yeah,
I know you're making the right decision, but I'm still pissed off about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had that. Remember when our friends went to university when we were kids, and we were like, "Oh, you're going to leave us? We've been friends through school and primary school, secondary school, and college."
I was one of the ones who went.
You were. And we again, you had that moment where like you feel like you're never going to see them again in your life, but realistically, they're back every few weeks or months, so you go see them, and it's not as serious. But in this moment, it could be because Riley's leaving. But she has one more thing for Ellie. She gets out the Halloween mask, the wolf mask, and the clown mask again. Great ode to the video game. They put them on. She shows that she stole Ellie's Walkman at some point. She snagged it from her bag. Ellie kicks off. She says, I was probably going to give you it back. They play the music nice and loud. They get on the tabletops and start dancing away. They're probably, again, very tipsy at this point. Tipsy, emotional, in love, teenage relationships, hormones, everything all over the place. They're leaving each other. You can imagine they're very heightened at this moment in time. The girls enjoy moments.
They're working up the courage to kind of like confront the feelings, aren't they?
Yeah, we've all been there with relationships where like no one knows really how to make the first move. You've got butterflies in the stomach. You don't want to overstep your boundaries. You don't want to scare them away, but you kind of feel like you're all on the same page. But who's going to make the first move? Yeah, the girls have a moment of enjoyment. They do some dancing. Ellie obviously doesn't seem really that into it that much. It's kind of like us when we go out. We're not really into dancing until we're really, really drunk. We just awkwardly stand there until we have enough drinks to relax.
Narrow level of drunk where you get into it.
Very fine line. And yeah, the girls kind of eventually get into it. Ellie comes round to it, and they're having some genuine fun, just music, dancing together. And then the sober moment of Ellie realizes that in this moment of absolute joy and elation with Riley, she's like, takes the mask off. Riley takes the mask off. She's like, oh, what is it? And Ellie just says, just don't go. Don't go. She's decided, like, I know I said I was cool with it, but don't go. And Riley's response is, okay. And then Ellie leans in for a cheeky kiss with Riley. Yeah. Immediately apologizes and says, I'm sorry. And Riley says, for what? Boom. We've done it, Richie. That's of this, they both know they've made that Ellie's made that final move to just show Riley what she really, really means to her. They have absolute sheer joy and nervous excitement. You can see it in I guess both their eyes. Bella Ramsey is phenomenal in this moment. Like, she shows such just in her eyes,
massive smile, that the relief. Like, I took me chance and it's worked.
That big dumb grin of like, yes, like it's all cards are showing up Ellie right now. Absolute joy is clear to see in both of their eyes. But unfortunately, Richie, in the world of The Last of Us, you don't get to enjoy that shared happiness for apparently more than 0.5 seconds or something before we hear some rustling at the entrance of the Halloween store. And what emerges from it? A big dirty runner / clicker infected person, whatever it is, just to ruin all of their fun in and amongst all the music.
I took this as a runner, but it looks like it's on its way to be a clicker.
Yeah, he's kind of got the fungal thing going.
It's kind of interesting, actually, because we think of them as discrete stages, but they're not really. It's like a continuous evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
there's probably a point where you go, okay, this is no longer a runner, and now this is a clicker.
Yeah.
But where's that point?
A little mushroom comes in and gives you a new badge. You've been promoted. You're now a clicker. Yeah. He bursts through the door, charges the girls. Riley says, get ready to run. Gets a few shots off at this runner. Evidently had practice shooting with the Fireflies, and Federa's not prepared her that well. She doesn't get any headshots off. He overpowers them. Ellie, I think, Riley gets knocked out temporarily on the floor. Ellie gets a few stabs into the guy's side. Does nothing because he overpowers her.
It's also a guy's side that it's not exactly
it doesn't do anything. Riley comes back after coming back around again, hits him with a bat. Again, very quickly gets overpowered. There's chaos everywhere, falling over through kind of shelving units and such. And then Ellie finally stabs the runner in the head with her blade. He hits the ground dead with a knife in it sticking out his head. Ellie pulls the knife out. She kind of has this moment of elation of like, we did it, we killed him, it's victory. And then she turns to see Riley staring like kind of cold, dead eyes at Ellie. She looks down. She's been bitten. Frantically wiping away the blood. No, shit. Cuts back up. Riley shows her a hand. She's kind of been bitten between the thumb and the finger as well.
Yeah. Well, Riley notices straight away on herself. Like, before she even sees Ellie, she's like, you see in her face, and Ellie's just like getting up. Riley's just like, her face just drops. She's probably feeling the pain. She's probably looking like,
yeah. She's like, both girls are just kind of struck with fear of like, shit. Because they both know they're goners at this point. Yeah. Like, they're dead to rights. There's no cure. There's no coming back for this that we know of. Shit. Cut to black. And then, oddly enough, we cut back to present day. With Joel. We see Joel. He's freezing cold in the basement, on the basement floor. We see Ellie goes through that door right from the opening of the episode, where she thinks back to experience with Riley. She doesn't want Joel to die, which I guess at this point we must think, we know Ellie survives. Like, that's the great thing as the audience member. Like, we know she doesn't die, but now we know she's in a scenario where both her and Riley are bitten.
She doesn't know, though, in this scenario.
Yeah, so then we cut to Joel, and Ellie's clearly decided that she's not going to leave Joel, and she starts frantically looking around for supplies or medicine.
It's one of these another points of no return. Ellie hesitates at the door handle, and you can tell she's making up her mind. Does she go, or does she do everything she can to save Joel? She couldn't save Riley. Just, we know that's where it's going. Like,
yeah.
We don't need to see Riley die. It's done. Like, Ellie is unique in the fact that she's immune. And now she's got this other, like, protector figure, another person she loves in a different way, but she still loves him. It's like, hesitates. Do I leave him, or do I do whatever I can? She makes a decision to just start ransacking the house.
Yeah, she goes through everything looking for anything that can help, basically. But we don't stay there very long, and then we cut back to the mall scene where Ellie is trashing the place with a bat. Clearly, both girls are dealing with the reality of death differently.
Very different, yeah.
Riley's just sat crying to herself. Ellie's smashing the shit out of anything and everything that goes. She eventually gives out and sits down. I love Riley's line. It's the same from the game when she says, like, there's some more shit over there if you want to break that too. Which, again, it's nice to see there's a little bit of levity in what is essentially their imminent demise. Riley points out to Ellie, the way she sees it, they've got two options. The easy way out with a pistol. Don't know how you'd want to negotiate that between the two of you. Who kills who? One of them has to kill the other one first, or one of them has to kill and then kill himself. So that's a tough. We actually see that in part 2 in just like a side story. Or option 2, they just keep going together. And I quote from Riley, she says, "We don't quit, whether it's 2 minutes or 2 days. We don't give that up. We can just be all poetic and shit and lose our minds together." And that's, again, direct quote from the game, but it's again, there is something poetic about just both going crazy together, even though they've got to turn into horrible fungal monsters.
We've just kind of, although we've not actually said the words, we've pretty much just both, like, confirmed our feelings for each other. It's like,
yeah,
do we just go out now, or do we do what we can and just make whatever little time we have together count?
It's very Shakespearean, in a way, Romeo and Juliet.
These are two people, it's kind of reminiscent of Bill and Frank. Bill and Frank were old. They were old when they made this decision. They spent they had a life together.
Yeah, make me some toast.
So it's like, yeah, okay, let's just call time on us now. Bill and Frank, where, like, Ellie and Riley's like, they're at the beginning of their life. They
didn't even have 5 minutes, bless them.
Yeah.
Before it all came crashing down.
They only had 5 seconds.
Yeah. Ellie asks about option 3, and Riley just says, "Sorry, there is no option 3." The girls embrace, cuddle each other, lean into each other, crying away, and then we cut away. We cut back to present day. Ellie finds, in all of her rummaging, she finds a needle and thread. She returns to Joel, and they have like a touching moment where she goes back to Joel, and I think he realizes that she came back for me almost, and they kind of lock hands and squeeze really tightly, of kind of like, "I'm here for you." And obviously Joel must be like, oh, could you imagine the relief of like, oh shit, I've not been left to die. Even though I'm sure in the moment when he was like, "Go save yourself," someone coming back for you must be like, oh, I've got a second chance here potentially. Like, the relief must be real.
It's a relief, it's also it would be a conflicted relief. It's like, oh, you should have went.
Yeah. But again, if I was dying and someone came back.
You've got a horse, you've got a head start. Just head back.
Yeah.
Like, you probably know it probably went pretty much a straight line. No one have took any like weird back roads or anything. Just go fast as you can, head north, head back to Tommy.
Yeah.
Joel's probably like, well, he's probably aware that the wound itself isn't overly severe. It's bad, but it's probably he could probably survive from that wound.
He doesn't know that. Unless you're a medical expert, you're just going to presume. But she starts to stitch him up.
He probably knows that he's not in any imminent danger, and that maybe Ellie has a chance to get back to Tommy and get to safety, and then send Tommy to like maybe come back for him or something.
I think he's more
Or
worried
just
about them
like
being
die.
caught up too. I think, and he couldn't defend her if the if the 3 or 4 people who were chasing them follow the tracks that they've clearly left. But she starts to stitch him up with the needle and thread that she finds. It looks horrific, by the way. Like I don't feel like they needed to sit on his stomach for that long. Obviously, it was prosthetics, but yeah. Not very nice, right? Seeing needles go through actual skin. I know that's how it works in real life, but
I think it adds to the tension of it, though. Like,
it does. It looks grim. There's a child literally performing a medical procedure on you that with no experience or practice. No, she doesn't even. If you talk about infection earlier on, Richie, she just uses a needle and thread she finds in a drawer that's been there for 20 years potentially. No cauterizing or anything, but either way, ouch. The music swells as Ellie essentially is saving Joel's
Ellie
life.
also not got a first aid. She should at least found a lighter or something, just like sanitize it as much as she could.
But yeah, and I like the kind of dichotomy of this episode of that just as we see her lose her time with Riley, because Riley's dead imminently. She saves Joel's life here. Like she's literally stayed behind, left him behind. She stayed behind to save Joel's life, and what she's doing now is what she couldn't do for Riley, which is save someone's life, and that's what she's wanted to do for such a long time. And again, like you said, she loves Riley, she loves Joel in different ways, but at this moment in time, she can do something to hopefully save him. We cut to black, the music swells, it's the Left Behind guitar theme, which is perfect. Once again, love the fact that they're using the video game music in the show to great effect. And then we end, we're on credits. That is the end of the Left Behind episode. I will say, interesting cuts at the end, the way they left the girls in their moment of like, just as they're cuddling in and embracing, we had that weird cut of them. I feel like they cut back to Joel a little bit too early. I would have rather saw out the element of the bit with the girls and then cut to Joel for the end. It felt weird jumping back to Joel for all of a minute for her to rummage through some drawers and then go back to them in the mall again and then come back to Joel. It felt like we got 2 splits for no payoff. If you like at the start with the cold open, it felt like it could have just played out Ellie and Riley's story, then cut to Joel's element of the story without really having the 2 cuts in there. But a couple of things again to round it all out. There was a few things that were missing from the video game, which I was hoping they would include. We didn't get the water guns, Richie.
Yeah,
I was hoping we'd see them. So in the Left Behind DLC, folks, the Riley steals Ellie's water guns from presumably Captain Kwong from his storage unit, and they used to love playing with these in the Fedra training encampment, water pistols instead of actual real guns, of course. And they kept them. And in the video game, you get to have this really playful moment in a clothing shop when you got to pump up your water pistol and essentially just hunt each other down. So rather than hunting clickers and stuff, you use water guns, and it's fun, and they have a good bit of banter back and forth about getting soaked through. And again, kids with water guns, like what more fun could you have? And also the bricks, Richie. Ellie's a brick fucking master, and she didn't get to challenge Riley at the competitive brick smashing game in the mall. But again, they're just video game elements, but I was hoping to see them in some way, shape or form.
It would have been nice, a bit more of a nod to it. Like, even if you didn't see the full water fight, you just saw like Riley shoot Ellie with a water gun or something. Just a little bit more in there, but I suppose that it's one of them. Like when you're making a TV show, you want to keep it a bit tighter than you can with a game. And like, we've got an hour to tell the story. How much does this add to the story compared to? I wouldn't be surprised if they shot it. If they shot some stuff and when it's just not working. Yeah,
it'll definitely be on the cutting board because again, the DLC is probably like a 5-hour experience, I would say. Yeah. There are elements that aren't included. So in the video game side, when Ellie is out with doing the adventures with Riley, the game very frequently cuts back to present world where she's looking for the medication in an abandoned mall. So you get that kind of dichotomy of the mall with Riley in the past and the mall in the future with Joel looking for medicine and supplies with clickers, and the people who are hunting Ellie and Joel down do take place in it. So there are some more fight elements and playful elements. Same with like the Halloween shop. We get a lot more time in the Halloween shop with the 2 of them, but as you said, condensing it down to like 55 minutes, I thought it was done really, really well. And there was something, I guess, at the end. I was still holding out hope that the TV show would show us Ellie and Riley's outcome, like what happened to them. We may still see it in the next 2 episodes. We may get another flashback yet, but it felt like cutting to black. I understand as an audience we're supposed to just like, we know what happens, but I kind of wanted to see what the decision was. Like, did Ellie have to kill Riley and I want to see Ellie deal with not turning, but watching Riley turn, because that's got to be some emotional shit to watch your friend turn into one while you're seemingly fine. You've got a gun with a bullet.
I'd like them to save this for season 2, actually. I think it could be a nice thing in season 2 to help like Ellie and Dina's relationship develop, as Ellie kind of reminisces tells probably Dina about Riley, and I think you could use it there rather than here. I think it might be more potent there. Yeah. Where here it's just, okay, we know that Riley's going to die. We know that Ellie isn't. We've already heard Ellie saying she has kind of like killed before, and she's always been kind of curious as, is it still them in there? Yeah. There's a lot throughout the show. It's kind of implied that Riley is the one that Ellie killed.
That's what we suspect. And
so I think at the moment we don't need to see it, especially if it could be used in season 2 as like, because I had this thought for season 2 is like, I think there's more game in season 2. There's more complex story. You could almost tell another entire season of like this show set largely in just the flashbacks of episode 2, of part 2.
Absolutely, we just need.
So you start, and it's also going to give Bella Ramsey a bit more time to get a little bit older to become the Ellie that we see in the future, and you could see that development and have a bit more time with her and Joel as well. Absolutely,
and there's one really important line from the game, which I think again we may see Riley back in another flashback. We might see another 10-minute, 15-minute sequence of how they dealt with the aftermath of being bitten and turning, and maybe Marlene discovers them in the mall, because we know at some point Marlene recruits Ellie in some way, shape, or form. We might see how that pans out, but yeah, in the video game, Ellie says, referencing Riley, she's like, her name was Riley, and she was the first one to die. Is what she says in the game. And again, whether she dies by Ellie killing her or she dies because Ellie witnessed her being bit and turn, there's something in there that I think could be really explored. And obviously they didn't do it in the show, they didn't do it in the game, but I feel like it's such a critical character moment for Ellie. I get as an audience we could presume what happens, but I feel like they want to show that on TV at some time to really land the importance of it in her becoming who she ends up being.
I'm thinking that's a Joel and Ellie moment, or like an Ellie and Dina moment, where it's like Ellie being vulnerable with someone she trusts. Yeah. And like, probably Joel actually, if you think like Ellie's whole thing's like, everyone who's I've ever cared for has either left me or died. Except for fucking you. Except fucking for you. It's kind of like, once we get into past this current story they're telling, when Joel and Ellie kind of have time together, it's one of them things where like she might open up about like the other people. Who are the others in your life? Like, yeah, obviously she never knew her parents, so Riley's probably the first person she truly cared about.
Yeah, completely. But that brings us to an end, Richie, for both Ellie and Riley, and this episode Left Behind. Episode 7 of 9. Of course, we end every episode by looking ahead to next week very, very briefly. Next week's episode 8, When We Are in Need, seems to be the episode when we are finally going to be introduced to David. And more importantly, if you watch the HBO preview trailer, Troy Baker. This episode may as well be titled the Troy Baker episode, because Troy, who voiced and mocap Joel in the video games, gets about the most screen time this clip I've ever seen. But we see Joel still recovering. Ellie bumps into some new people whilst out hunting for deer, it seems to be. And some relationship, chaos, violence, anger, love, hate, something like that is obviously going to ensue in this episode. Anyone who's played the video games has probably been waiting all season for this part to be introduced. So we don't have too long to wait, Richie, for the penultimate episode of this series. And we get to see it played out. And of course, interesting one from this episode. Everyone was predicting it. No Ashley Johnson. We didn't see Ellie's mum in a flashback here. So that presumably now might be the finale they're keeping it for.
I actually think, now we're past this episode, it makes sense for it to be the finale. Because if that's going to be the more Marlene again, this is you talk about how Marlene discovers Ellie going back to the mall.
Mm-hmm.
That also would make sense because the last episodes, like, was look for the light. We know it's going to be set in the hospital.
Yeah.
There's not actually a lot of story that happens there, so having some more stuff to pad out story elements and character elements with flashbacks, such as potentially what happens to Riley, how Ellie gets found by Marlene. It also gives a nice opportunity to reintroduce Marlene. We haven't seen her since episode 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so let's reintroduce that character.
Yeah, let's get back to it.
And now we was like, oh, so this is how, like, this is where Ellie was when we first ever met her. Like, get us to that point.
Absolutely. So while we wait for next week, though, let's round out this week by looking at you. Help us out in the chat, folks, if you have a thought on this too. Performance of the week. Which actor/actress would you like to give your performance of the week to, Richie?
I mean, there's only really 2 characters in this episode for the most part, and it's a hard one.
Is a hard one, of course. We don't see either of them die on camera, so we can't use our usual death rule, although we know Riley,
dies.
aka Storm Reed, is not long for this world after being bitten at the end. But yeah, who would you give it to? A lot of emotional scene, a lot of subtle nuances between love kindling between 2 young girls. What would you say? Who did it the best?
As it stands, we haven't actually had a repeat actor get a performance of the week.
That is true.
7, but I think I don't know. I am torn because it's almost like another Bill and Frank situation where they play off each other so well. It's almost hard to split them. But do we split them or do we just give both Storm Reid and Bella Ramsey?
I think with there being 2, we've got to commit to one of them for the sake of the award of performance of the week. We can't keep splitting it every week.
I think I'm leaning towards Bella Ramsey, but if I can be very convinced by Storm Reid. As I said, I'm just completely torn here. Like,
that's a little strange. Yes, I'm with you, Richie. Bella Ramsey for the win. For me, after last week, we gave it to Pedro Pascal because of his individual performance, and I feel like this week has been Bella's a chance to kind of step out from under Pedro's, not shadow, but at the end of the day, he's the more acclaimed actor. It's who we expect to have the more emotional beats from. And I think this, having her separate from him with Storm Reid, and I think that she showcases the relationship. We know Riley likes Ellie, but Ellie, coming from the emotional, she really wants this to work with Riley. Like, she shows the love, the infatuation, the awe, the wonder, the absolute emotion. And remember, she does a lot of this just with her eyes and her body language. You can see when they're dancing with the masks on at the end. The thing that kind of cemented for me is when they're dancing away and you can see Ellie can't really dance, she's not really into it, and then she does get into it, and even though you can't even see her face, there's a moment, Richie, where her body language changes when you can see she realises that she doesn't want Riley to leave, and she kind of drops her shoulders, and she can show that without even a face on display. And I think that tied in with the carousel moment, the lights, the wonder of the arcade with the Mortal Kombat machine. I think she just hit every single emotional beat of wonder, childish love and everything. I think she smashed it out of the park. Like, no disrespect to Storm Reid, I think she came in, did wonderful, but I have more vested interests in Riley's character, and I think Bella Ramsey really, really delivered. She won up from Pedro last week.
I agree. Bella did have the wider range of emotions, and as you're right, you see that moment where she makes a decision. She's like, I'm going for this, because worst case scenario, come the morning, Riley's gone, I'll never see her again.
Absolutely.
So it's like, it's a point of no return. It's like, if I don't make my move here, that's it. I'll never have another chance. Absolutely.
Raven in the chat says he would also give it to Bella Ramsey. So I think we're confident with that one. Performance of the week. What about moment of the week, Richie? What was your flagship moment from this week's episode? Chat, what was your flagship moment? What made you think, like, damn, that was good shit?
It's hard because the way there's not really that many actual moments, kind of. Like, there's no, like, standout stuff. It's like everything that happened, it's just kind of naturally, it feels very natural how these characters interact throughout the entire episode. And the story they tell, it feels like continuous. More, especially when there isn't actually a lot of, like, cut from scenes. Like the cut from scenes are all mainly in the mall, really. It's going well. We just went from one part of the mall to the next part.
Yeah, it flows quite nice, doesn't it? Beat for beat.
Every scene flows very nicely into each other. But I don't think we can just say the entire mall.
No, if I would stay in the mall for me initially.
It's what bit of the mall?
I would say, just because it kind of kickstarts the whole thing, the initial introduction of the mall, I think, is the biggest wow moment for, I think, because the audience, if you hadn't played the game, you probably as an audience member wouldn't expect this at all. You might just think they're going and like exploring abandoned houses with dead bodies and drunk people and expecting to see maybe a clicker or two. The fact that you see a fully functioning mall that the girls get to explore, and when all them lights come on, you see the wonder in Bella's face, and you know inherently, even as a human in our real world, if you were in her situation, if you were in her situation, you and me, you listeners and viewers out there, if you were in an abandoned mall, all them lights came on, you knew you had the next few hours to do whatever the fuck you wanted. In a real world or a fictional world, go into every shop, explore everything. I'd be down for that, and I know I'd have one hell of a time with no consequences, except for these two might die. But in our world,
they got some pretty bad consequences, to be fair, which is why you shouldn't break into malls.
Exactly. So mall intro, I think, for moment of the week.
Don't do crime, kids. You'll get bit by zombie fungus things.
And then finally, Richie, as always, our best video game adaptation of the week. What is the best thing that translated from the game direct into this episode? Of course, this episode was the whole DLC. So what did you look at and go, they just nailed that? That was the video game, beat for beat. I loved it. Because there was a lot.
Yeah, well, you kind of touched on it. It's kind of the entire thing is adapted, like apart from like the water guns. They changed things around a bit, obviously. Like I think the dancing thing in the Halloween shop happens a bit earlier in the game than it does in the show. Yeah, well, they dance on the tables in like a clothes shop, and the Halloween is like an exploration area well before then. So the merge two kind of scenes. Yeah, and it made sense. Yeah. I think I'm gonna go with like the Halloween shop because you kind of get everything. The whole point of like the Left Behind DLC is kind of establishing Ellie more as a character, finding out more about her. I think that is the scene where we do like Ellie has that kind of, she confronts Riley with her feelings. Yeah, got some of the like video game moments with the wolf and the clown masks and stuff. Okay. And you actually got the moment where Ellie's bitten. That's true. I'm leaning more towards the arcade. So we might need the chat. We might need the chat to settle this, just because I think it's the throwback to the arcade from the earlier episodes in the show. I think as video gamers, and anyone who's watching this who's a video game fan, who a lot of viewers probably are, it's a nice nod to the audience to be like, we respect video games as much as these girls do. Even though it's post-apocalyptic world, this is video games, guys, and this is the shit. Arcades are awesome. Ellie's comment, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and it's an arcade, which is like, it's like a nod to gamers, right? They're not what they were anymore, because I think home arcades originally, when you think about it, these were the pinnacle of video games. You couldn't get these quality of games anywhere else. No, because they used massive cabinets to store one game. So, like when you grow, even when we were kids, to be honest, like the quality of a game in an arcade was probably better than what you could get in a home console. Yeah. Now I think it's pretty much flipped. Yeah. But I do think it just lends itself so well to, like, they have that emotional beat where they have a little playfulness together. Did you notice on the sound as well when they were playing the arcades? They mentioned it in the official podcast, but they went specifically for the sounds that are happening in the video game. They cranked up like the bass and the ambience, so when you're watching it as a viewer, you're hearing the sounds not as though they're coming from the machine, but as though they're played direct to us, so we hear that. And in the video game, kind of immerse you in what it's like. Yeah, you feel the punches, you feel the sound effects. And even though there was some things that they did differently, which in the video game, obviously, Riley, there's no power, and the game doesn't work, and Riley has to talk Ellie through what's happening. It all happens in her head, and it's a beautiful moment. We didn't get to see the Jack and Daxter racing. There was no Crash Team Racing reference. I thought they might have snuck in another Naughty Dog Easter egg here and there. It doesn't really make sense for the time. It doesn't. But and again, it's a fake world. I kind of like how they just went true to the time period.
Yeah.
They got the movie in, the Wolf movie.
Yeah, the Dawn of the...
Dawn of the Wolf. Or
the Wolf, yeah. Which is a Twilight throwaway joke, which will probably come back in a later episode with Pedro and Bella. We happy with the arcade then?
I'm happy with the arcade. I do like how they just went, you know what? Although we could just get any Sony IP we want, we're actually going to be true to what a mall arcade would be like.
Yeah.
In that era, and seemingly this era now, because I don't know if you've ever been to an arcade, Chris, recently. They haven't changed in 20 years.
I actually went to a barcade with you, remember?
Yeah, okay.
We got pissed and played video games in an arcade.
Yeah, we did.
Guitar Hero, bit of Mario Kart, bit of WWE SmackDown, whilst drunk.
I've got my fake ice cube that I stole.
Yeah, you do. Well. So the arcade for the win. But everyone, that does bring us to an end for episode 7, Left Behind. Now, don't you get left behind. And of course, remember to run along to the comments. Leave a comment below. Stalk us on social media at Helix Plays Games for all of our wonderful content. Talking the PS, PlayStation, Xpass, Xbox, live shows. We'll be back tomorrow to play Halo. Finish Halo, actually, the finale of our Halo playthrough for the first time on Xbox Cloud Gaming. Click that notification bell so you kept in the loop with all of that great content, and blow to yourself on all of our other content. But above all else, folks, endure and survive. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Live chat, everyone out there who joins us on demand after the fact in the comments. You can find us also on podcast services if you don't want to watch this on YouTube. And we'll see you next week for the penultimate episode, which will feature Troy Baker heavily. My name's been Chris.
And I've been Richie.
Endure and survive. Bye-bye.
Bye.